It's Matterall. We're going to talk about EVE Online. It's Wednesday, August 5th, 2020. Here with some friends, Caleb Spod, Gregorin, Nick's lurking. And we have a new friend, Khan, we'll call him. He's from Ushra Khan. How's it going, Khan? Can we hear you?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Hang around, lurk if you want. Audience is totally welcome to hang out with us inside of Public Talk 1 on TIS Discord. Okay, let's pick up where we left off yesterday. There's a big deal with metaliminal storms in nullsec. For those that don't know and are catching up, they are storms that were caused by disturbances from abyssal invasions. And the storms, there's 4 types of storms. There's 2 large and 2 small. And there's 2 sizes. There's large storms and small storms. And there's 4 different types of storms. And they will travel on the map, moving around along the routes of the gates. So they will travel through gates. Which means that they won't just appear like incursions or invasions, just randomly. They will actually follow a progressive pattern. They might turn left, turn right, but they probably will not double back. So every day or every 2 days, they will take a jump in one direction.
Well, speculation would say that the direction will be based on the system they're in, right? There's going to be, I would expect, almost equal chance of which gate they're going to take. So if there's 6 gates in a system, you basically split up your percentages and just roll the dice.
There we go. Well, they said it's based on an AI, and it probably won't jump backwards is the only thing they've said.
Yeah, of course. There's going to be some sort of momentum and maybe also some sort of avoidance system. So it might reduce the chance of actually doing the collision thing. That they have also confirmed that collisions will be additive. So 2 storms in the same system will both be in effect if they overlap.
I love that. Yeah, some wicked mutations there. But
yeah, especially because we don't know the load that this will have on systems, so we don't know how many potential future variant storms can actually be introduced to the game. Because you could have more drizzle than rain, and if you have these smaller systems that also move around, it might actually be even more interesting to have these overlaps in the future. So if we get like 10 or 15 different variations of weather or storms, and they would pretty much fill up almost the entire map, being in both null and low and in high sec. It would basically be a proof of concept, right, to see how these things work. This is why they are a little bit extreme, a little bit fuzzy in nature, very, very high modifiers on the storms.
Did you say fuzzy in nature?
Yeah, because Fuzzy is known for doing that thing with the dials of just going, yank it up to 10 and see what happens, and how the players cry and get salty and
so you didn't say,
attack him.
You didn't
personally.
say fuzzy in nature. You said fuzzy in nature. Okay. By the way, Frosty brings up a good point, and the problem is if the system goes into, we'll say the storm, if the storm goes into a dead-end system, it will have to double back.
Yeah, that's going to be natural, because if it hits a dead-end system, there's only one way out. So there's only one direction that it can move after 24 hours. So I don't think it can get stuck as such. Of course, it might do the double back. If it's a very long dead-end system, you might have the chance that it will go backwards and kind of almost stay in the pocket. But again, this is up to the AI. I don't think it's going to do that.
But if you think about it, there are some systems that are, you go into a constellation and it has like 4 out of 5 dead end systems. It's going to bounce around in there like one of those little vacuums that vacuums on its own. If it gets stuck into a little closet, it's just going to be bouncing around these.
It's more if it gets stuck in those carousel systems, right? Where there's almost like a dead end with
the Roomba.
With a little pocket, right?
Yeah.
So it can start doing the whole carousel Roomba thing and just get stuck in there forever. I know that you are an every show person, and I'm pretty sure that pocket high sec with low sec all around it, it could get stuck in there for a while.
Yeah. So the cool thing about these storms is, although the original system, the center point, the eye of the storm is going to be in nullsec always, the bleed off effect for 3 systems can actually enter high sec or low sec. So you might get sideswiped by, maybe that's wrong, you might get brushed by some of the stuff, some of the storm effects.
Yeah, that's confirmed. I think some of the speculation we had yesterday is actually even more interesting. If it, in a future iteration, if, say, they do smaller weather systems that don't show up on the map and can actually move through wormholes, and players can almost weather manipulation, interact with it, and try to roll holes to actually get them to exit in a specific direction. There's so much potential iteration with this. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and they said they're gonna create different types of storms later, so they can really play with this. It's more of a function. It's more of like a system that they can adjust to do creative work on. It's like balancing ships, balancing storms, balancing all kinds of stuff that creates randomness. That keeps the game constantly a challenge. Now here's an interesting place in Providence down here. I'll see if I can zoom in on it. Look at that constellation. It's HTAC KW4A. Can you imagine if a storm crawls into this one pipe that goes in? It's going to bounce around these systems for a while. So that whole place, like, this is no longer ideal territory, because if a storm enters in here, you're in some real trouble.
What if you like the storm?
What if yeah, it's true. What if this is a mining, 10 times the speed on mining? Like, this might be a great place to live. You're right. But, waiting out the storm when the storm is sitting on top of your constellation is no longer an easy option.
I think that's the best takeaway from looking at those stats, the fact that there's always an upside and a downside. I think that is fascinating.
Yeah. To answer Red Thought's question here, storms are only going to be one system wide. The eye of the storm will be one system wide, but 3 systems adjacent, or 3 deep. I believe it's 3 deep, so it'll be 3 to the left, 3 to the right, which makes the system 7. So it makes the storm 7 systems
7
wide.
jumps in circumference potentially, and then of course depending on where it is, because it's going to be jump and gate based and not light year based, at least in this first iteration.
When did they announce the 3 jump thing? Because when I was reading it, it was just immediately adjacent systems to 1.
In our stream,
Signal confirmed that it's going to be potentially up to 3 jumps out from the center of the storm.
I don't know if
it's going to be.
Those are going to be big.
Yeah, they're going to be massive. That's what I said when I mentioned that potentially you could have a situation where it fills up almost a third of a region in certain regions, right?
It's just the forum post still claims a single jump.
Nope, it said 3, and I said, oh, so that makes the system makes the storm 4 systems wide, and he goes, no, 3 on either side.
Yeah. So 7, not in circumference, in diameter, of course.
Yeah, those are big storms. Those might be the big ones. The small ones might actually be smaller. So maybe that's what they're talking about. But yeah, there are situations where I feel like there are going to be some interesting effects. Let's go to like catch and see. I think catch and stain are basically pipes. So this is a great place for a storm, which is going to just kind of rip right through these systems. I wish it was light years, because then it has a little more unpredictability, which I think would be pretty cool. And then it could travel gates, regionally or something. But I just feel like this should definitely be a light year storm. Well, it depends on how they define it.
There should be different types of storm where some travel via light year distance and some travel via gates.
Yeah.
It's probably easier to build it in light year in a gate system because they already have invasions and
roaming
incursions that behave similarly.
I think you're right. Well, we'll see. This is pretty exciting, though. I think we all like it, right? I mean, the general feedback yesterday was there's going to be some absurdity, but this is pretty cool.
When new stuff gets introduced, there's always absurdities and potential abuse scenarios, right? And I'm also looking forward to the first day when we're going to see all the shenanigans of things where it might be broken. Like, how does this actually affect? How would it work on, say, POS weaponry? Because we still have those. So we know they don't work on structures and NPCs, but we don't know if they work on POSs.
I wonder if they will originate the first storms in, like, NPC nullsec.
I think if it's laws, if it's law based, they should really originate them in one of the systems that are affected, right? This is maybe more sports terrain.
I definitely think they should do more stuff with NPC space.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like, let's just start them here and let them roam from here, but who knows? I mean, you know, they released the Blood Raider Sotios inside of Blood Raider space, obviously, because that's where it made sense. And that was totally dominated by Imperium at the time.
Yeah, I remember that was being commented on a lot.
Yeah, they saw it as favoritism, like, what? Yeah. These guys are already the richest and most powerful group. And, you know, and they do a lot of NPC stuff, and you're going to do what? You're going to give them exclusive rights to this content? People were annoyed. And then they were really annoyed when the Imperium figured out how to defeat it within a week or so, within a few days, with Punishers. That was they took pie in the face. That they, being CCP, took pie in the face on that one. And then later they kind of worked it out. All right. So we talked a lot about Storm. Anybody else have anything they want to say about Storms?
Well, only that we kind of, it was linked that I think it was linked in by Convict in a thread that this is not really that new, and it's not like out of left field and surprise, we have this feature. It was talked about more than a year ago by CCP Rise, and the picture from his presentation was also shown when he talked about all these things. And on that slide is actually some of the things that I also mentioned yesterday about biomes and seasons and the differentiation of space, and how all of this is basically the practical phase 3 of what Rattati and his team is doing. This is really the implementation stuff. As we said, there are some things that Rattati can turn knobs very fast, which he did, and other things actually need some new programming and some new design changes. And this is basically it. This is the first aspect of the dynamic distribution of resource gathering options.
Yeah, so guy from Eve University here, Bawaki Akami, went ahead and just colorized some of these storms. So the electrical storm has no cloaking in it. That was one of the more interesting.
Yeah, and also one of the more extreme ones, right? Because as some people pointed out, it's good that it's basically an effective nerf to all this cloaky campy stuff and all of that shenanigans. But it also, because it's flat and it's just no cloaking at all, that also has a lot of repercussions on other things. I think someone mentioned that if war or very big fights happen under a storm like this, we cannot have neutral eyes being cloaked and streaming and looking at it anymore. That's just not going to be possible. So no news.
Well, but that's a meta consideration. That's a meta consideration. That's not a game consideration.
Yeah, but it's still relevant. There's just some things that will no longer be possible in that system as long as it's there.
Well, I don't like the idea
things that would be valid.
No cloaking, because then you know to stay out of there. What I would really like is to see...
I really don't like that no cloaking idea.
I would like to see cloaking interference, which has an 80% chance of taking you down, but you don't know when. So you would try to cloak in there, and then you would just be revealed, you know. And then once
something like it decloaks everyone every 5 minutes, or something like that. So,
at random times.
Some middle ground, right? So you still have the ability to actually use cloaks in certain situations, but that it's completely hampered.
Yeah, it's kind of like... Yeah, it would be very entertaining to have to be like cloaked and to have your cloak interfered with and then dropped, and then you'd be like, oh my god, I'm exposed, and then you have that exhilaration of trying to get cloaked again or trying to get safe. But there is that possibility of doing it, so it creates a little bit of gameplay there. But if it's just no cloaking, then you just know, like, I'm not going in there at all, or I'm going in there to be seen.
And of course, Dunk Dinkle has been harvesting the tears of this no cloaking thing on the thread, which has been kind of hilarious because he's a big fan of the electrical storms.
Yeah, it's going to be a mistake.
Well, it's just less interesting than it could be, I think.
I don't think you can say that it's going to be a mistake. This is a first iteration. And it is exactly the type of still oppressive, but not globally oppressive. So this is exactly the kind of blackout and the type of chaos that we needed in the game. I think this is near perfect. It just needs those knobs to be turned and some iterations to be done. And it's going to be really, really good for the game.
Yeah, so Thomal says, decloaks and burns out your cloak module? Yeah, maybe. Like, it would be really cool if, like, your cloak is coming down. It doesn't just turn off, but it starts to be interfered with and starts coming down, and you could overheat it to keep it up, but then you burn it out. Something like that. I mean, it's crazy the amount of development work we're talking about now, but now you have interesting gameplay, interesting decision-making, interesting risk-taking. Well, it's more interesting. This stuff's all interesting anyway, but it's even more interesting when it becomes something that could happen.
But the problem is that it has to be something that is a location and universal effect, right? So it's not something that can potentially create a fuck ton of server load. So it needs to be something kind of smart. If they wanted to do something like what you're talking about, they would have to do something like cloak cycle time or something like that, right?
ECM. I was thinking like ECM burst, right? Like it breaks your locks, not just at that moment, but for a few seconds later. But it has
to be a modifier that can be on the entire system. So it's pretty much everyone in the system is affected by it, and it doesn't have to do calculations on individual people being cloaked.
Yeah. Well, then, okay, so the easy thing is, and we're just playing around with ideas here, but the decloak electrical impulse goes through every periodic period. So every 7 or 8 minutes, everybody gets decloaked all at once.
Yeah, that would require a completely different type of code and design. So that's why we will most likely not see something like that, because I think that would actually be a strain on the servers, and then you can't have a lot of these systems if they have to do something like that.
This reminds me of these Hollywood parties where everybody would pile into a room naked, and then someone would hit the lights, and then they turn off the lights.
Well, if you wanted to do something universal, you could maybe do something like decloak range goes crazy, right? Is it 2
kilometers?
Hold on a second.
Can I just comment like how you didn't even blink at my Hollywood party example, which was a complete fabrication? Okay, Caleb, you can continue now.
No, it's just that if you wanted something that was going to be universal, an effect that extends the decloaking range massively, isn't it 2 clicks if you're near a collidable object, then you get decloaked? If they make that a lot larger, like let's say 250 kilometers, right, then you effectively still have the chance and the opportunity to cloak yourself, but you're going to be decloaked quite frequently because something comes through your big bubble, right? And that would not necessarily require a lot of server load calculations.
Can we just say, I think a bubble shouldn't mess with your cloak. Or maybe it should have, a percentage chance of messing with your cloak. I think there's not enough security in cloaking.
I think that what they should do is add another charge that can be loaded into an interdiction probe launcher, and that would decloak instead of disrupt warp.
Yeah. All right. Some of the sorry, I think spilling my coffee this morning has made me kind of punchy, so I'm trying to get reactions out of you guys. Okay. Thanks for commenters. I'm having a great time watching your comments. Okay, so proposed nullsec metaliminal storm effects. They're proposed because they're going to be on the test server for the next few days. This is coming in this month, so it's here. This is not some 3, 4, or 5 months from now or some pipe dream that might come next year. CCP is really focused on delivering what they are presenting in the span of a quarter. That's what these quarterlies are. So for quadrants, they call them quadrants because there's 4 per year, and we're in the 3rd one now. There'll be one more. I think they said earlier this year that there'll be more pain in the 3rd one for nullsec, and this must be part of what they were talking about. But then the 4th one, there'll be more incentives for nullsec. I think we heard that from Artati somewhere. So hang in there if you feel like everything that you have worked up for is on fire and being interfered with, because there is going to be light at the end of this tunnel this year. So we'll see that out. Thanks, Hurricane Warning. Appreciate that.
And this is why I think it's important to mention something like seasonality and biomes, because these designs open up the opportunity to do something like have buffs or debuffs on structures. So like something like moon mining. And if there is something like that in effect, right, then say putting minerals back in moons in a way that actually makes sense, which is the whole negative feedback. If you want moon materials, you take it into one type of frequency. If you want minerals, you take it into another type of frequency of fracking. But if you then have a modifier on top of that from, say, seasonality, the equivalent to weather, right? And in one season, so for 1 month or 2 months, you're going to have a debuff to fracking speed and fracking frequency. In one, you're going to have a boost to yield, something like that. You can do many, many things with these concepts that they're introducing now. And I do think that that would validate a sort of a buff to the whole scarcity thing in the 4th quadrant.
Okay, so Hurricane Warning accidentally hit the sub button. He was just wondering what would happen if he did. So good on you. That's what happens. Let's look at some of these storms though, because I think there's going to be a heck of a lot of talk about like what the best storms are and what the best reaction to those storms are. Should you fly into these? Should you avoid them? That sort of thing. And we're just going to talk about the strong storms. So this is like as strong as they will be. There's weak versions of all these 4 that we're about to talk about. The first one is the gamma ray storm. And so your explosive resistance is -25. Your shield hit points is +25. But your remote repairs, your remote shield and armor repairs goes down by 90%. And your warp disruption down by 100%. Kind of crazy, right? I like this one.
Can we just say thank you to Hurricane Warning for all of those gifted subs he just threw in there? Yeah, that was really nice. Stop
pushing the buttons, Hurricane. You're going to go broke. Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you on behalf of all those people you just helped out. Okay, so the metaliminal electrical ray storm, it's going to knock down your electromagnetic resists, which makes sense, by 25%. Your cap recharge is -25%, which is a good thing, because I believe that's cycle time. And your virus coherence, which is what you need to do some hacking, that's the hacking minigame, is 25, +25, which is a huge boost. And your probe strength is +50%. But this storm doesn't allow you to cloak. So if you're going to be doing exploring and hacking, which is what you do at exploration sites, You're going to do it not cloaked. I see the contradictions in here. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so the plasma storm. So we did gamma, we did electrical. This is the plasma storm. And this one is thermal resist drop by 25%, but your armor hit points go up by 25%. But your weapon damage is plus 50%. But here's the trick. Your turret and tracking speed is negative 50%. So you might pack a bigger punch, but you're going to be missing a lot more. And your missile and fighter explosion radius is down 50%. So that's interesting. So more damage, less actual landing punches. And this is an interesting one, the exotic storm. This has kinetic resists of 25% less, but scan resolution is improved by 25%. So you're a little harder to scan down, or you can scan down a little better. Your mining laser cycle time is negative 25%. That's good. You want a shorter cycle time. That means you have to wait less time for it to reignite and mine some more. And your warp speed is plus 100%. And again, here you have local. That means on your ship. That's not when you're repairing somebody else, but that's when you're repairing yourself. Your local armor and shield repair cycle is minus 25%. And there is an extra ore anomaly in here. So it will spawn more ore in this storm pattern. Oh, I see. And so the electrical one that we talked about, that's kind of like for explorers, that will have an extra relic site. So more stuff to explore. And your plasma, which we just talked about, will have more Triglavian combat sites. The one where you do 50% more damage, but you land less punches. So that's a combat site there. And then the gamma one, which is the first one we talked about, where your shield hit points go up, but your explosive resists go down. And your remote, where you're repairing somebody else.
I just have one question to this.
90% less. Hold on, let me finish. That one will have an extra rogue drone combat site. So there's 2 combat sites. There's 1 mining site and there's 1 relic site. As far as storms go. All right.
But just a small question, because this is similar to the one yesterday when I misunderstood the mining laser cycle time. Isn't that exactly the same with the armor shield repair? That's a buff. That's not nerf.
No. That's the repair amount versus a shorter, less cycle time is good, but less amount is bad.
The reason this chart, which is just, thank you, Gaurav, has just been put into chat is because if it's red, it's bad. If it's green, it's good. So you might see a negative 25% on the laser mining, but it's green, which means it's a good thing.
But shouldn't it then say cycle repair amount?
Yeah,
so cycle time is above.
Yeah, so the gamma one, penalizes the amount that you repair. The exotic one buffs bonuses the cycle time, making the cycle time shorter.
Yeah, so that is actually supposed to be green as well.
Yeah,
minus 25% cycle time is actually a buff.
Yeah, the exotic one should be green. It's red. It should be green. See, it says negative 25% red, negative 10% red. That should be green. That's a buff. That's a bonus.
Oh, the cycle time on the armor repair, on your local armor repair.
It's faster reps.
Okay, yeah. And you know what? We did cover that, and Fozzie said, yeah, but it eats your capacitor faster. It still should probably be green.
It doesn't eat your capacitor faster. It eats your capacitor at the same rate. You could just repair faster. Like, it doesn't cost more gigajoules per hit points repaired. It's the same. One cycle costs the same. So you could turn your shield booster on for 1 cycle, turn it off, and then you get reps, and you can run it faster. It's just the ability to run it more often. You don't have to.
Correct, but if you turn it on and walk away,
well, don't do that. It's irresponsible.
You will repair faster. Oh, people panic. But again, armor repair and shield repair take a lot of capacitor. So, but it is, you're right. That's, it should be a plus screen. So we'll consider that a mistake on this chart.
Yeah.
Anyway, good effort there, Akami.
Yeah, I know. So Chad is saying, "Oh, well, it'll eat your capacitor fast." Well, all it is literally one attribute on that module is made better. You know, that's it. It's just a smaller number that's better for you. You can choose to use it, or you can choose to not.
I think it should be green because the desired effect of a cycle time of shortening it is to produce more of a result. That's a good thing. You can produce more of a result at a faster pace.
I'll give a perfect example of why this is just a bonus and not a penalty. People pay 3 billion ISK for a high grade savior set that does just this and nothing else.
Right. They don't talk about the capacitor part of that. Yeah. But Fozzie did say that, you know, when somebody said, hey, you know, you'll be doing local repairs faster. And he said, yeah, but your capacitor will go. And that's why I mentioned it. And that's probably why the crowd mentions it. But you're right. People buy implants just to get this effect. All right. However, because of this, the total amount of cap used in the time is bigger. Oh, that's from Dutch Gunner. We know him.
Yeah, Dutch is explaining in chat.
Well, Fonsway, we didn't get your impressions on these storms yesterday. You weren't here, but you're usually person we go to talk about new dev blogs. What did you think?
Well, the mechanics themselves appear very interesting. I like it. I think that this is going to give an opportunity, to shake things up. Basically, it's just a little bit of geography in the sandbox. It's a little,
little topography.
Topography is the word I was looking for. I paused there. I was like, that's not the word I want. Can you help me? Yeah, it just adds a little bit of flavor. There are concerns and complaints that are valid. This is being dropped in the middle of a very big war after the CSM specifically requested that things of this sort not be done. Now, does that mean that they should be listened to? Does that mean this is a bad move? I don't know. But that is a legitimate concern of theirs, that their war will be impacted. The entire concept of null space is this is your space.
Can we talk about that? Who cares? The CSM says, hey, we're having a big war here. Guess what? Only 20% of the players are having a big war. Everybody else is waiting for features.
Right. It's a big
This
chunk.
is why the CSM coming from one aspect of the game, which is nullsec or nullsec issues, whether it be industrial, Kenneth, who I'm a big fan of, or governors like Gobbins and Vily, or military generals like Vily and whoever else is out there. When you have all these guys that think in the same terms of like, we're having a big war, Eve's about big wars, don't mess this up for us, don't drop any new features, and CCP ends up dropping a topography change that might affect or might not, who knows, like that gives me hope that the game is run by devs, not by interested parties in results.
I have a couple of comments on that. I'll try to keep it brief, I guess. So firstly, the CSM request was put forward by the body as a whole, which is not entirely null people. Like I know Torvald, was part of it.
8 out of 10.
Okay, so that's fair. And while I was presenting the viewpoint that I have read from other players, it's not necessarily my viewpoint. There are players who are apparently, legitimately upset about this. And again, null security. The concept of null security space is that this is your space. And like it's kind of like carte blanche. So to throw things like this in there, I can understand why people would not like that. Although I think that the line that I generally use with regard to any game change at all is that we all wake up to the same EVE Online game client, and we all have the same opportunity to do what we want to do there. Yeah. So we have to look at the situation every day and learn how to exploit it better than everyone else, and that's how you win.
All right, Cheetah's coming at me, who's a friend of mine, says, that's pretty short-sighted. I can totally hear his voice, too. That's a pretty short-sighted viewpoint. High-sec play does not generate press coverage. I've heard that so many times, and my answer to that is, what's your press coverage gotten us? What good is all that press coverage? Seriously.
I didn't see where you were getting that comment, but anyway.
Cheetah in chat said it.
That was Aerox.
Okay. Well, the people that are complaining are not the people involved in the war. That, I think, is
that so?
relevant.
I don't know.
No, it kind of is so, right? Of course, Vily is the top representative, and he said this is not an issue at all. And I think many people that know about how this war thing is going to develop, and they all say the same thing. It's not really a factor for them, and they are not bothered. So the people that are currently bothered by this are the people who have specific gameplay that is going to be messed up or completely changed. And so I don't really think the naysayers are, well, that relevant right now.
I know it's like almost always a mistake to read the forums when something like this is posted, but unfortunately the official CCP post did not include the details, and only the link to the forums had the details, which, you know, the actual effects and the mechanics. So I read it, and then I made the mistake of scrolling past Fozzie's post and reading what other players wrote.
Yeah, don't go all the way. Don't go full. Don't go full thread. Never go full thread.
Yeah. So I read the rest, and there's it was the salt on this particular subject appeared to be much stronger than for things that I've seen in the past.
Okay, so Manixar said what Vily had said too, and he says, well, both sides have to deal with the change equally as far as the war goes. So I think it was
from a 10-mile overview, yeah, but like these storms move, you know, one system every 1 to 2 days. And we don't know, you know, you can see where they're going. You can't predict where they're going to be the next time they move. But these things are not controllable, meaning they could end up, you know, in someone's backyard harming or helping them, as opposed to the other side.
Yeah, I think you said it best, Caleb, when you said, oh, the flood plains are going to become mud plains.
that was an Agincourt reference, because that was pretty much why that whole scenario ended up completely in favor of the British, right? Because they were basically just killing all the cavalry that was stuck in the mud, and it
was more complicated than that.
Okay, let's not go into medieval history yet. We'll save that for a little later.
Yeah, overall impression of these weather effects is that it'll provide. It should be an interesting content generator. And people who choose to engage in it and use it for what it is, I think will enjoy it. Like if you wake up and you say, I'm gonna play EVE Online today better than everybody else, and that's all you care about, then you're gonna have fun with this.
I think the funny part about comparing this to something like Agincourt, with the fact that some theories say that it was because of getting stuck in the mud, I think that's something that could be a future iteration, right? So something that completely nerf all the speed tanking and similar designs, right? So there's so many things, and of course there's already some of these things that I think, wasn't it Cable that said that micro warp drives are going to be useless, but afterburners are going to potentially be completely buffed because of this. So there's just all of these new weird meta choices being done because of this weather. And I think that's going to be really exciting.
Was he talking about the scan resolution change in the exotic ray storm? Or I don't see where anywhere else it talks about signature or scan resolution, unless I missed something. Oh yeah, signature radius in the gamma is negative 25%. So if your signature radius goes down and you're an afterburner, I imagine you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, you're tough to hit.
Yeah. So they're starting to... What I liked about yesterday, although we did get into the weeds for sure, is you saw some really brainy guys. I call them propeller heads, which was probably not the nicest way to say that. I don't know where that came from. But they were really crunching in front of you. They were crunching out some of the scenario gaming that they were thinking about. Like, how is this going to affect this ship, this style of ship, this technique? And they were going through a lot of that real time, because we just heard about these changes yesterday when we went to air.
I think it was also mentioned that this is potentially good for battleships, which I think is kind of interesting, because battleships have been shelved for quite a while, and the fact that these can kind of come back with some of these effects would be really interesting and useful.
Why was that? I didn't get that relationship.
I'm not the guy to ask. I actually listen when these people say these things because it will have a direct effect on things like markets. I don't necessarily understand in detail when they talk because they go so much in detail that I feel like I'm watching the AT tournament.
Wait a minute. There's a lot to unpack in what you just said, but
can I be Murray's champion because he's at work and can't talk on post?
Oh, poor Murray. Yeah, go ahead.
So he said, it's going to reduce number of fights. He said you straight up can't attack structures that are properly fit under 90% remote repair impedance, and fighting outnumbered under 50% damage boost will be more difficult. So I think I can address those. Like, I don't think this is going to reduce all kinds of fights. I think it'll just change the scenario. It just shakes things up. I think Dominus Nolan posted an image on Twitter of a guy shaking up an ant farm. Like, that's kind of what's happening. But yeah, certain types of engagements will be blocked and are going to be painful or just not going to work. But other types of engagements, I think, will be encouraged. And again, it's only in the 5 or 10 systems that are impacted by these storms at a time.
Oh, it could be more, but the point is that it's really the thing that this force majeure effect says today is not a mining day, or today is not a takedown structures day, right? That's really what it's doing. It's basically saying, well, today is a ratting day, or stuff like that. Because of these upsides, it's kind of forcing you to choose a handful of options, and it completely negates a few others. And I think that's actually not only by design, but that's really a healthy thing for the game, because then you have this factor that can either be detrimental to you or completely save you.
I want to point out there's a little bit of an argument going on about incursions, and do people avoid them in nullsec, or do they farm them? And I think both things are true. I've seen incursions.
Some players avoid. Some players avoid them. Some players farm them endlessly, and some players stomp them to make them go away.
Yeah, I know that one of the few things that scared FCs, at least a while ago, because I haven't really fleeted up in a long time, was incursions. If there was an incursion in an area, you did not run the fleet through there. You took a detour around them. So you did that. But I also know that people used to farm the heck out of them when you were in nullsec because they're big money. And it's kind of like free farming in your area.
I think the one I'm hoping most for is the one that I think you mentioned, Marol, with storm chasers. The fact that someone specializes to actually live under these storms. I think that would be hilarious. It would be the most emergent gameplay that I've seen for an game.
Yeah, like someone who specializes in exploiting one or more of these specific weathers, and they just go with it and they do their thing wherever it is. I love that. Super cool.
Yeah, they have their orca full of their gear, and they kind of putt along behind storms and then put out their gear and rush into the center of the storm doing whatever they're going to do. Because
consider the fact that CCP has created this force majeure factor thing, right? And then they basically have this environment, and the result and the response from the player base is to basically populate it with activity. That would be the best outcome at all from this.
One of the things I'm liking about some of these changes are that there's a diversity of things to do, which means there's a diversity of ways to be recognized, which is one of the big things. And there's a diversity of goals to achieve. And that's always been a really strong suit for EVE Online. If you finished a goal, there was a number of different goals that you could pick from. Instead of everybody being put on the same track to do the same thing, which then broke and made it easy to do that one thing, and then you achieve your goal, and then you're like, now what? That's the recipe for leaving the game early.
This is why my fantasy, or my little dream, was that one of the things that this could do is it could be almost directly tied into Tech 3 design. And the fact that Tech 3 becomes this specialized type of hardware that you use for something like storm chasing, or living under a storm, or engaging in storm and weird weather, because that would create this whole new incentive for wormhole dwellers and wormhole technology. And it's actually what was initially the whole idea with wormholes and Tech 3, right? It's just, it was kind of put on the shelf for quite a lot of years. and then basically because of things like is printing, then the special things from wormholes have not really been the focus because it's not been strong in the meta as far as I remember.
Oh, that would be... Yeah, Tech 3 was originated when wormholes were introduced. In fact, to build Tech 3 stuff, you needed to go into wormholes to get the ingredients, basically. So they kind of came in together, and since then, they've kind of... I don't know if they've... kind of kept pace with one another, but it would be interesting to see these wormhole-like wide-ranging effects on the system and the neighboring systems in this case have opportunities for you to use T3 again, T3 cruisers, and fit them, park in a station and fit it for a certain behavior and then go into this thing. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm going to take it one step further. I would like to see a venture and a barge that's Tech 3 capable, right? I think that would also be really interesting with these systems.
I would
consider doing something like that.
I wouldn't hold my breath for any changes to anything Tech 3. Well, the cruisers specifically. Anytime that subject comes up, the response from CCP is the same. It's that I'm going to paraphrase, we're afraid of Tech 3s. We don't know how to work with those anymore.
Well, if their sole purpose is to have these specific options of countering these storm and weather effects, and that's really the only change. So you're basically getting a venture or a barge, and it's Tech 3 in design, and it's got a few added features, but otherwise it's completely the same. Right, performance-wise, it's really just to have something that you can bring into these storms and do resource gathering.
I mean, that would be interesting. I do feel like we have enough tools as it is. Like, things are configurable enough, but it would be interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And if they did a Tech 3 version of the Noctis, it should be named the Stormcrow.
Is that the technical name for it, or is it a raven?
Well, because crows are kind of scavengers, and then you're basically being a scavenger under the storm, which would be kind of cool.
They always tend to have dark clouds behind them, don't they? When you see them on trees perched. All right, cool. So that's the metaliminal storm effects coming later this month. We don't know when they'll appear on Test Center, but probably soon. They've put out the first round of statistics and storm types. These may change over time, but this is coming a lot sooner than you might think, which is great.
So Murray mentioned in chat something like black hole wormhole effect makes nano easy mode for good pilots. And I'm glad that he mentioned that, because we see there are 4 weathers here, not 5. Because there are 5 weathers for Abyss. The dark Abyss weather, the speed weather, and the turret range nerf was not created. Only the other 4 Abyss weathers were, and I'm curious as to why.
Do these storms reflect abyssal bonuses?
Yes, these are based on the basic abyssal weathers. Most of the resistance penalty and the primary bonus. So the top 2 lines of each one. That comes straight out of Abyss. The other stuff is kind of inspired by wormholes. The bottom 4 lines for each of the entries is kind of more wormhole.
Well, maybe they're keeping number 5 in their sleeve, right, to actually roll out sooner.
Yeah, that's possible. But yeah, so the electrical Abyss has the EM resistant capacitor charge time and all those, but they did not include a weather based on dark Abyss / black hole wormholes. That would have been the 5th one, and it doesn't exist. I wonder why they.
So these system effects have to do with their equivalence in abyssal space. Does that extend all the way into wormholes?
So wormhole weather and abyssal weather are entirely different. They were totally inspired a little bit, like that was. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, we have weather. Let's make other weather. So like the dark site was inspired by black holes, but they are in fact unique. Some of the effects were kind of reused, but these 4 are. I mean, based on the story, they come from Abyss.
Yeah. So they're related. Yeah.
They came out of Abyss.
Not.
And
Okay. So when they say electrical,
again, the top two lines, cars. But yeah, the top two lines correlate directly to Abyss weather.
Okay, got it. That's good to know. So then if you're learning this weathering system, or if you've learned the abyssal system, then you already have a leg up on the storm systems.
See, this is where I would also really like CCP to consider letting us have the map outside of the client and actually be able to view it on their website. Because with this thing, with weather, it would be really nice to actually be able to look at it outside and not necessarily be dependent on APIs.
A question from Devil Dog says, do these storms...
I answered him.
You did? Oh, thank you. Well, let me answer it out loud for people who are listening.
Sorry, go ahead, please.
He asks, do storms spawn trig rats in system effects? And the answer, I'll just read yours, Von Sway. There are trig combat sites spawned in plasma storms. That is super concise. So plasma storms.
Yeah, so the plasma storms will have them, the other ones won't. And it's not roaming rats, it's just the combat sites.
Right. But Gamma will have combat sites. They just won't be Triglavian. They'll be rogue drone combat sites.
Yeah, which is an interesting choice because drone drops are in the toilet right now on the market. So I wonder if that is going to change soon, and these storms will become very profitable.
Well, I don't know if it's that. Like, we'll put this in here as a reward because we're about to make that valuable.
Yeah, I have no idea if there are plans or not, but it's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Oh, something should be said. The only the large storms will spawn extra.
Correct.
Yeah, anomalies.
So the structure of these storms is that they are focused on one solar system, and the strong effects will be present in that single solar system as well as every solar system directly connected to that. And anything that is more than one jump away from the center is going to get weak effects.
Oh, interesting. So all the storms will be the same scale. There won't be a weak storm versus a strong storm.
That's correct. The storms cover an area centered on a single solar system. Everything that is one jump out gets a strong. Everything that is two jumps out gets a weak. I don't know if it extends three jumps or not. I think it does. Probably only two.
Three. Yeah, it's three jumps.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is going to cover quite an area, each storm.
So essentially you're going to have 3 systems wide strong storm, and then 4 systems wide.
Well, the strong is only one jump out.
Yeah.
Unless I'm incorrect. Am I incorrect?
Well, let's wait to see what happens there. But we're theorizing.
Well, it was in Fozzie's post.
Oh, well, we'll check it.
Yeah, I'll look it up while you keep talking.
It says, if the edge of the storm is currently 5 jumps away, that talks about the speed of the storm's movement. Here it is, 1 jump away. The central system plus 1 jump away. Each storm will have core system, but he calls it core systems. He doesn't say that that's where the strong... Oh, here it is. The strongest effects
Yeah, he says it directly.
Okay. Yeah, so you're going to have basically a storm in one system, and to the left and to the right, it's going to be equally strong effects. But then after those 2 systems on the left and the right, you have 2 more systems that are going to be weak. That sounds great. Makes sense.
The shape of a storm will change because of the Stargate connections. So as the single core system moves 1 jump, now all of a sudden we have a whole new topology to consider. You know, how many systems will be directly connected and get strong weather? How many will get weak? Like a storm can move 1 jump and become half the size or double the size.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, do we have anything else on storms?
Well, Cheetah asked in chat, he wants to know why it's jump related instead of constellation based, and I think that's just a balance decision that they made. Like, they wanted to make it based on, connections instead of constellations. I think it may cover more area that way.
I think also you can see that speaks to the predictability of where they're moving. You can see the area of possibilities. It's going to move left, right, go straight. Whereas an incursion just kind of pops up somewhere. You don't know why or when, or an invasion as well. So that was probably the difference. And the only alternative to those two styles, whether it be a random or following the map along the gates, is a light year radius, which is how capitals jump. Not sure that technology exists for them to use.
Yeah, so they made it more predictable in that you can tell where it is and where it's going, but less predictable in terms of the specific shape. So I actually kind of like that. So because they made it more predictable, they also had to make it less predictable in another way. But that last comment in chat right now by AJB is that's what I was referring to on the forums. Those are the responses that I saw, except the ones on the forums were less nice.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do more on storms in the future. We're going to get on to other things in this last few minutes. Apparently, we have Vily in here. Did a test Titan get into trouble yesterday? What happened there?
Yeah, Test Titan got in a little bit of trouble. So last night we had the 4GQ Fortizar armor timer belonging to Farah, where goons have been staging some capitals along with Wangs. So this is a Fortizar in Stain that's somewhat close to Legacy / PanFam Eastern stagings. It's not in direct range, but it is in bridge range. Anyways, we had to move a couple Titans into position to bridge the fleets in. So we had two fleets sitting on Titans ready to bridge, and a third that was going to pick up whoever bridged first. First two fleets pop sinos, do a bridge in. Fortizar's got like 14 minutes on it, I think, at the time. And new Titan pilot presses bridge instead of jump, and there goes the knight. He's immediately, like, we're popping the sino on the station, not on the Fortizar grid. So he's now sitting on a station in a Titan, immediately tackled, of course.
Because he can't tether.
Yeah, because he can't tether. Well, it's a station, like a station, like a sand station. Immediately tackled. Horde was actually the only fleet that bridged in, because I was bridging in Horde. So we had to hurriedly rush some sinos around. Tie-dye kicked in, which helped us a little bit, and we got some caps on grid and got him stabilized pretty quick. The fight on the station was sort of in their favor. It was very small, actually, considering how large it could have been. Where I think only 20 ships actually died on the station, mostly just dictors, and I think we lost 10 hacks, something like that. Pretty meaningless in the scheme of things.
What station was this? Sorry.
Oh. This is on top of the 1014 station in 4 Gulf, Quebec.
Got it. Thank you. Stain. Just to take people there.
Yeah. So anyways, we jump in caps to cover the Titan. Enemy chooses not to escalate. So the fight on the station ends. Titan is extracted safely, and we jump out a couple of the supers that jumped in to help support him as well. And make the choice to go reinforce the Fortizar again, just to see if we can pick a fight out of it, because everybody's here, why not? Obviously, the Fortizar saved itself while we were saving the Titan, because tie-dye kicked in, so a 15-minute timer goes really fast when you're sitting there trying to save a Titan under 10% tie-dye.
So the mission was scrubbed.
Yeah, the second the Titan bridged instead of jumped it, the mission was over. Yeah. The Titan became Save Private Titan.
Save Private Titan.
It certainly made the evening more interesting.
Yeah. So we head on over to the Fortizar grid. I warp the caps over there first. Asher chooses to warp his Sacrilege fleet alone to the caps at 0, about 30 seconds before all 3 of our combined fleets land on the caps at basically 10. So he gets his fleet basically cut in half as he tries to fleet warp away. It loses about half. I think he lost about 60 combined Logi and hacks, so it's a pretty big blow to the balls. We put the B-52s, long-range Phoenixes, onto the Dread to start reinforcing it. obviously supported by Fax, and I think we had about 20 carriers there at the time. That happens for a little bit. We're covering the entrances. A Thanatos disconnects and decides to warp back to the Fortizar at 0. He gets promptly slaughtered by the Fortizar itself because he's obviously not utilizing the range and faxes that we had there with him. He's nowhere near the group, etc. He dies basically almost instantly. But the enemy does detether to shoot him, so all of our subcap fleets warp up to the Fortizar, and we engage in combat again on the Fortizar. Fight again goes our way. We trade 2-1, I think, in that situation. Carriers put some fighters up as well. Just nice kind of smooth combat. Fortizar is being shot. Enemy tries to run with one of their Munin fleets. I think it was the Goon Munin fleet, or maybe the Initiative one, I can't remember. Through Romeo 8 gate, I think it is. Or B gate, I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head. You should be, I'm sure you're looking at it.
Yeah, I'll get back to it.
On the other side, PanFam drops like 70 or 100 super carriers on them as they're trying to bail, along with 2 of her subcap fleets, maybe 3. They have themselves a nice little slaughter. Meanwhile, back in 4GQ, Sacrilege Fleet and I think Initiative Munins or Goon Munins, the other Munin fleet, whatever one it was, warps down to our caps. We drop shield supers and some more shield caps to support those caps. They bail, take very minor losses on either side, and then they warp back to the Fortizar and chill. The Munins in RB are then either escaped or dead. All allied forces then slowly begin to extract. Fortizar is reinforced, and we all go home.
Wow. All right. Eventful. What what happened to the rookie that jumped the Titan, Private Titan? Was he super nervous afterwards?
Yeah, he said he went and took a drink.
Yeah.
After. I mean, listen, it's one of those things, right? If you're a newer Titan pilot, most Titan pilots do that at some point. They make the mistake the hard way. Usually, you're not bridging in, a 250-man fleet into like 600 or 700 hostiles in a really hot situation like that when you make the mistake. But obviously, he did, and it happens. I mean, there's nothing really else to do. You just say, "Don't do." He's like, "Do I need to have any words, Vily?" I'm like, "No, man, just don't do it again." And he's like, there's nothing else you can really say about it. You just kind of.
Oh, I'm sure he like
kind of laugh.
Sweated out a gallon of sweat.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It all worked out fine in the end, but obviously that's not the way you want to go. We've definitely had that mistake happen to us before, once in the Fraternity War, actually, which was, funny enough, when it happened in the Fraternity War to us, the Titan died, but it became a massive victory for us, and actually it was probably one of the most important battles of the war, so.
It just sounds like there's 2 kinds of Titan pilots,
was
and
that
there's
Komodo?
the kind that learn and the kind that don't.
No, this was a Ragnarok in, I think it was near QLPX. I can't remember what system it was. But he jumped us at a bridge to Fraternity, dropped 80 dreads on him. Then we brought in Titans of Supers at like a little bit of a distance with Fax, I think, and we killed like 90 dreads for like 5. And at the same time, we also managed to secure the BOZ-1 iHub, which was the first iHub we took of the Fret War, which was a massive situation for us.
So really, now we've had 2 of the classics. We've had the oops, wrong gate, and we've had the oops, bridge versus jump thing. What's the next Darwin oops that we're going to see in this war?
That's a good question.
The thing was, the jump and the bridge, didn't those used to be right next to each other on the menu?
They literally used to be jump bridge, like ding ding, like right next to each other. And CCP actually changed that because people complained that it was too close to each other. So now it's like 4 or 5 menu drops away from each other.
Yeah, it sounds like you could even try to click the right one and just misclick.
Correct. I don't think I did it, but I almost did it once. I can't remember. It's been a long time.
I think that's why a lot.
But yeah, it was very like sketchy. Like if your mouse wasn't like one of those really like well wired ones, it could go bad for you.
I think that's why people got a lot of, and I mean this in a good way, they got a lot of slack when they did jump instead of bridge, because that mistake was made by a lot of people.
Definitely a little bit more now than nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just sounds like there's 2 kinds of Titan pilots, the ones who learn from this and the ones who keep doing it.
Well, the reality is most Titan pilots don't do it a second time. It's a very rare situation where they do.
Teacher has the example of the next big oops would be if someone actually forgot to pay a salt bill.
Wow. All right. There's other stuff going on too. I just heard about that yesterday while it was happening, but snuffed out. I think defending a couple of Fortizars. Do we have Gregorn? Are you available? Or are you still in fleet?
Yeah. Snuffed out.
I'm surprised you don't. I'm surprised you don't want to talk about the thing that's happening right now before you get down to snuff.
Oh shoot! What's happening right now?
J5A Keepstar is being put into hull.
Oh, it's actually being taken down. This is the last, or put into hull. So this is the armor timer.
Yep.
Oh.
This is the timer where usually people will fight over it if they're going to fight over it.
And is it contested?
Fighting right now.
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm in that fleet right now, and they're not fighting.
Okay, so uncontested is probably why we're not talking about it. Although this is a historic system, and it's also a Keepstar that was put there. It was the first Keepstar in Fountain. It was put there by the culture. That was part of what was sold to Goon Swarm. There's the system. You can see it. It's the lead system to Cloud Ring, big regional gate there. And that was part of when the culture had Fountain, they decided to take off because they weren't liking that lifestyle. They sold it off, the whole region, and that Keepstar, that one Keepstar, to the Imperium.
Yeah, it's especially interesting to note because there's a large cache of Imperium assets in this Keepstar that were not evacuated. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that's why Killer B said he thought this was the only one that they might fight over in Northern Fountain.
Oh, and this is the one where Pando from the Initiative said, we fueled that thing for 5 years. You're not going to get any loot out of it, right?
No, that was IGE they're referring to.
Oh, okay.
But this is like, it's important to remember this was Goon's kind of northern staging point for arguably the last year and a half to a degree. And they had recently moved a large cache of ships up here to help do handout dread bombs and that kind of thing from here, but they never ended up doing it.
But I'm hearing that the dread cache was extracted.
Some of it was.
Yeah, like a week or more ago. So I wonder.
Well, when you got members on the fireside asking when they're going to have a chance to get their J5A assets out, it tells me all I need to know.
Somebody's stuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, they aren't putting up a fight. This is the armor timer, which means the next round, it's a foregone conclusion. This Keepstar will die at the hands of Horde and Pappy.
Well, it's not a foregone conclusion, but it's a reasonable one. You know,
I think
the armor timer is always the best timer to fight over.
Right. You know, explain that. Why is the armor timer the best timer to fight over?
Well, on the armor timer, you can defend with limited risk, right? So even if you lose the timer, the Keepstar still stands. So, you know, you have this kind of safe zone on the grid where even if everything goes wrong, you can still kind of extract within the Keepstar range or dock or tether or whatever. And, you know, it just limits that risk. Versus the hull timer where if thing goes bad, then the Keepstar dies and you lose everything on the grid. Unless you extract like halfway through the hull timer, which is difficult to do at best. Also, during the hull timer, there's no services left, so you can't jump clone to the Keepstar, you can't jump clone out of the Keepstar, whereas the armor timer, you can still do those things right up until it's the timer's lost.
Yeah, that's good for people to know, to understand that. That's why armor timers are the big ones. Now, shield timers aren't important because you can constantly...
Correct. Like during the GOTG war, I think NC Dot reinforced one of the GOTG Keepstars like 15 times or something ridiculous just because of time zone battles, right? Because you can reinforce things when people aren't awake and then the armor timer happens.
Yeah. All right.
Shield timers, when it comes to anything, are pretty irrelevant to a degree.
You let those go, otherwise they'll ring that doorbell over and over and over again.
Yeah, realistically.
All right. So we're hearing it's about 20 to 30 dreads evac from J5. Don't know if that's all of them. Clearly some people still have equipment there.
There's definitely more than 20 or 30 dreads in that cache.
Oh, you think so? Okay. So shall see. When this blows up, what happens to those dreads? Or whatever equipment's left in there? All asset safetied?
That's almost certainly what will happen. I mean, by letting this happen, it means all the jump clones there are cooked, right? So if they want to extract any assets as Keepstar, they're going to have to run the people up in something, dock, then take the Keepstar chain down because there's basically no Keepstars left aside from IGE to jump to, and hope they can extract quickly enough, which is not an easy thing to do anymore as Fountain becomes more and more hostile day by day.
Right. So we heard yesterday that Fountain's going to take like a week or two to clean up and to completely pacify. What's going on? And again, you're from the invading forces, so you're not an unbiased necessarily.
No, by no means, obviously.
But not an uninterested party, we should say. We'd love to get...
Doomsday Firing.
Oh, Doomsday Firing in JTAC 5? At what?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
It's probably just the fireworks of it all.
Dictor or something, looks like.
Yeah, what is going on in the southern sphere? And you can just speak in broad strokes, like if there's...
Very little.
Yeah.
Like, Imperium is putting a lot of work into keeping period bases and Aquarius entrances, the two regionals, under lock and key as much as possible, and they're coming across the border bit by bit. Usually when they go across the border, they lose. When we go across the border, we lose. The capital advantage that is ceded on the opponent's side of the border is so massive. It just doesn't leave a whole lot of opportunity for people to make winning plays, even if they're making the right tactical moves.
Well, it looks, in Aquarius in specific, it looks like you guys are splitting it now between Condi and I can't tell who else is in there, but not Condi.
Well, there's a variety of legacy alliances and such that are just taking Sov and Aquarius. We're not taking Sov with any particular intention of the people taking the iHubs today will hold it tomorrow kind of thing. It's just more so, kill your enemy's iHub, replace it with your own. That way they can't replace it an hour later kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's just generally, one of those things where you create more work for your enemy. And to be honest, when we initially attacked Aquarius and took all those iHubs and replaced them, the intent was to let goons retake them all, so it would just give us more targets to mess around with them on. But for the most part, they haven't actually kind of done that. So
yeah, I saw you guys rolled into Aquarius in a big way, and I wasn't sure how much Imperium rolled back those changes, but it looks like they're only halfway back.
They've taken a few of the iHubs back, but for the most part, like we were expecting basically them the next day to push and try and take their all 25 or whatever back, but they didn't. So,
well, and the thing about the iHubs, because they're infrastructure hubs, is they're basically, I like to think of them as building permits, and so you're at least suppressing the ability for them to have what kinds of things are you suppressing?
Well, the big one is obviously jump bridges and cyanojammers. Those are always the two big ones. But also it's all of the mining upgrades, the writing upgrades, the cyanogen upgrades, super capital construction. There's a variety of things that are tied to the iHub, but those are the kind of the big ones, as well as the fact it builds the strategic index, so the free ADM that everybody likes to have, taking the natural ADM from 1 to 2. Yeah,
I was thinking the bridges are the big thing because that's the traveling around that you need that helps out.
Yeah, the mobility and the counter mobility and the cyanojammers are the two most important parts of the iHub upgrades.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so this question here from Styx is, where's the nearest asset safety for Fountain? Is it the same as Delve?
Fountain goes to Hoffib, Delve goes to Ermelin.
Oh, Hoffib.
Yep.
So Hoffib is the headquarters of the invading. It's a staging point for the invading forces in Fountain. So probably won't be able to get things out of there for a while till things cool off.
Yeah, to be fair, I think actually there's like a third system that a portion of Fountain has the safeties too, but the majority is Hoffib, is my understanding.
Yikes. Well,
just before somebody's like, well, actually.
Yeah, technically speaking. Hoffib, the good news is your stuff can stay in asset safety indefinitely without any cost to you. So you can literally wait it out.
Yeah.
It's just you don't have access to those resources or that stuff. It's taken off the table for the duration of the war. All right, cool. Well, thanks for the update. And now, one last thing is, what was going on with Snuff?
Well, there was a fight earlier this morning in, I believe, Lanthorn between Siege Green and Snuffed Out.
Yeah, Lanthorn.
And yesterday there was a fight between Snuffed Out and a mix of Minmatar Militia and Wrecking Crew, and saw a couple others like 2 Maidens, 1 Chalice.
Yeah. That's Red Alert guys, aren't they? Like the Pravi security division.
Especially interesting to note during this fight, we've seen the first appearance of the Blaster Revelation and the Autocannon Revelation.
What?
What?
Somebody did that?
Yeah, some of the Infinity Avenger guys.
These are not...
What's the reasoning behind that?
These are T2, like, capital autocannons and T2 blasters.
Let's just explain why that's odd so that everybody can join us in our appreciation for it.
Normally, you know, when you have revelations, you want to have...
Amarian Dreadnought.
Yeah, usually when you have a
whole bonus.
Yeah, usually you would follow the whole bonus, which gives you a 25% bonus to capital energy turret damage and a 50% bonus to capital energy turret activation cost. The problem is, as revelations become more and more prevalent, you become more and more damage locked with your Dreadnought Force, aka all of your damage is EM and thermal because it's lasers, right? Obviously, Infinity Avenger thought that, you know, these T2 fitted Dreadnoughts with autocannons would help diversify their damage a little and do be better for their composition of their fleet, I guess. It's the first time I've ever seen it.
They felt that was a better idea than using a different hull.
I don't know, man. That's the first time I've seen it. Like, I mean, maybe they find that their Moroses are getting primaried first, or I don't know.
That's very interesting. So, so even though Siege Green is it Siege Green that did that?
It was Siege Green, yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is Infinity Avenger getting shot by Siege Green.
Oh, okay. Infinity Avenger here. These guys. Let's look and see if we can find.
Yeah, but like this Revelation literally only does 6,300 DPS with hail. Like that's with 1 gyro. That's not good.
It's not what it's supposed. That's not what that ship is supposed to do.
T2 guns, no.
Yeah, this is a repeating cannon. These are funny. Yeah, hail. You're right. Well, they ended up on the losing end of this fight, so I suppose it didn't go well for them this time. But that's pretty funny.
Yeah, and the Void Moros only does, or the Void Revelation only does 6,300 too. 6,300.
That's a lot, isn't it?
No.
Oh, okay. Is that like in Siege or something? Should it be doing a lot more?
Tech 2 Siege, Concord Iron Siege Blaster to the Void XL, you should be aiming for at least 14k.
Oh, so, wow. It's almost 50%. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
which does seem a lot less than the normal, but I'm not sure.
Gregorian, you were saying about
Actually, no, that makes sense. The Moros gets 2 damage bonuses, so yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Gregorian, you were saying this fight, what do we know what it was about? Was it over those Fortizars, the Prometheus?
I think it was Siege Green trying to reinforce the faction Fortizars that Snuffed Out is staging their Lanthorn deployment out of, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know that yesterday's fight was a regular Fortizar's Helltimer.
Got it. Well, you have Khan from Ushra Khan. Do you know anything about this? You've run into Snuff before, right? Oops, he's probably away. All right, well, that's the bell, right? The calls are coming in. We have Cable joining us at the last second, and Silva too. You guys have any comments? Any last comments before we go? Sorry, you guys came in at the end there. No? Okay. All right, well, I want to thank all you guys for hanging out with us today. and talking about stuff. We are going to wrap up now and raid over to, let's see, we'll go to Ron because there's probably some stuff to watch with that attack on, Fountain. So
Keepstar's just about to go whole.
Yeah, go ahead and catch this timer run out, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.